Aphex Twin is next, don't worry. Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, I'm talking about the new album from C418, Excursions. So, this is gonna be a special video for you guys. I brought on Ethan from the LP Club to join me to talk about this thing. Maybe not the person you'd expect me to bring on for a project like this, but he was the one who introduced me to C418 and made me realize that there's more to him than just the guy who made the soundtrack to a certain overexposed video game. So, let's just get right into it. Alright, so, I'm here with Ethan from the LP Club, and, we're here to talk about this latest album from, C418 called Excursions. And, yeah, let's just get right into it. So, we'll start with you, Ethan. Why don't you tell us a little bit of background with you and C418?
Well, like many kids of my generation, I played Minecraft growing up, and C418's music soundtracked the Minecraft game. You remember the, if you played Minecraft, you'll remember, you know, the sort of ambient music playing in the background as you were getting blown up by creepers and such. So I was always curious, because I remember first getting into, like, Aphex Twin and such, and always having an appreciation for electronic music, but mainly that probably started with C418 coming out of Minecraft. So I really enjoy the music from Minecraft, so I checked out more from him. And I've always been really fascinated by the dude because he makes some pretty great stuff here and there. One is one of my favorite electronic albums of all time. Although he does have lulls in his discography, there are some pretty great moments. Heck, I own the Minecraft Volume Alpha on vinyl. So I was curious going into this record, and I was really excited when you asked me if you wanted to talk about it. So what's your background with him?
My background on C418 is, basically I discovered him because you, Ethan, got me into him. About 2.5 years ago, we tried to review his album One, and do that on his channel, but I think, like, my internet crapped out, or one of our internets crapped out, and the review just ended up not happening, so, I guess this is, me tying that loose end. And since then, I've heard the other albums that C418 has on Spotify, all of them except for Minecraft Volume Beta, because I didn't really want to sit through 2 hours of that. But I've heard Minecraft Volume Alpha, and I thought that was actually really good. One is still probably the best album I've heard from him, but I also liked his album from last year, Dief. And the other two albums, 72 Minutes of Fame and 148, I guess they were pretty good, but I wasn't huge on them because, well, 148 mainly because it way overstayed its welcome, but I feel like C418's down-tempo material is great, but his more up-tempo house and trance stuff can be a little plain, and that stuff can never really clicked with me as much as the down-tempo stuff. So I guess that brings us to this latest album here, which focuses mainly on that more up-tempo house and trance stuff, and honestly, for me, it was probably my least favorite of the 6 albums I've heard from him so far.
Yeah, this record isn't great. It's not awful. It's definitely pleasant, which is good when it comes to sort of trance music particularly. But yeah, at the same time, a lot of this just feels really, I use this word a lot in reviews, but unsubstantial. There's not a whole lot of melodic licks or riffs. There's not even a lot of melodic moments that get stuck in my head. There are moments of this record I do like, and there are things that, like, when I'm talking about it, will pop into my head, but it just doesn't feel like anything really worth caring about, which sucks, because I like C418. I'm rooting for this dude.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I am with you partially. Now, I have had albums like this that don't really have a lot of hook power, and they can still do something for me, but, honestly, the main problem with this is that a lot of these tracks feel redundant. Like, they're kind of they kind of just all go for the same purpose. It feels like a lot of them are almost copy-pasted, and the sound of everything just really starts to get stale after a while. It basically ends up with this album feeling like John Hopkins' last Singularity album with most of the interesting stuff taken out.
As someone who doesn't listen to a whole lot of electronic music, I remember hearing that John Hopkins album and really being pleasantly surprised by it. But coming back to my second electronic record of the year over here, this doesn't feel like a record that has any sense of boundaries, for lack of a better term. It, like you said, with 148, this is another record that overstays its welcome with tracks that are easily 7 and 8 minutes throughout. Take the second track on the record, Cold Summer, which starts off kind of cool with, I notice, like, little hits of sound effects of animals and sort of a jungle-ish tone with the production. And while it just does sort of slowly coast on that for 8 minutes, and it does change up towards the end, it doesn't feel like it's moving. It doesn't feel like it's changing. It doesn't feel like there's anything here, and it doesn't even put you in just sort of a mood or a vibe that really keeps it comfortable and like something you'd enjoy for a repeated amount. It just feels just like it's sort of there. With this track, I remember towards the end when it starts changing it up, there's just sort of a little synth bass that sort of ascends, and it's really cool. And I thought something cool was going to come with the track, but nothing really happened. The track reads to me as background music, if I'm being honest. In this record, one thing that did really work really well over the weekend is studying music, because I have a test coming up on Tuesday, so this has been on the background for the entire weekend, and nothing has really stood out, but it has been good, not distraction study music.
Yeah, I can definitely see it working in that context. I mean, like, this stuff, I think, just by itself, I think this album sounds really good. The production and everything is excellent, but yeah, there's just not a lot that happens, and it feels really repetitive and really padded out. Even in terms of, like, individual tracks, I don't really have a lot to say, because I have a lot of the exact same things to say about each track, because they feel copy-pasted from each other. I feel like what you could do with this album is just chop it in half. Like, take out... You can take out, like, 8 tracks from this thing, have a nice solid album, or even, you could even cut it down to 4 tracks and have a solid EP, but you give me the title track, Thunderbird, Aviva, and Leak if you want an EP, and then you can add on Tingle, Beton, Figure 8, and Hope if you want an album. But you don't really need more than that.
You listed off some of my favorite songs there, and I think one of my favorite song, and one of the only songs on here that really stood out to me, was Tingle, because I really actually liked the way it sort of... Well, I like the way it sounds. The drums are really light and sort of... at least in my less experience in this genre, reminded me of sort of an 808 tone with the sort of light, just light percussive tones there, and I really like it because this is just sort of a more texture-based song, and it does sort of sustain the momentum because it's one of the shorter songs on here, if I remember correctly, and that's what I really like about that track. And I remember later in the record, there are moments where it picks up. Take Figure 8, which is another song I did kind of enjoy on here. But if I'm being honest, there's a lot of nothing here, and that's what I said. One of the only notes I really remembered that distinctly, like, talking about or like jotting down was with the title track. There's an overall sort of wind instrument vibe that comes from the beginning of the track that I liked, but really I can't tell you specifics on most of the songs here, just because it goes in one ear and out the other, and it feels so long. It feels, it's nearing 2 hours, if I remember correctly.
It's 100 minutes, and it has no business being 100 minutes.
Like, C418's best record, 1, is an incredibly lengthy record. The CD copy of it has 2 discs.
Yeah, but it's also 31 tracks, and all the tracks are really short, so it feels like it's moving a lot more quickly.
Absolutely, and it encompasses a lot of different tones, from the disco of the title track to the really beautiful build-up of one of my favorite songs of all time, The Weirdest Year of Your Life. There's no change on this record. It doesn't move, it doesn't go anywhere, and the tracks are so incredibly long that nothing has any real purpose. It feels like an album put out to have an album put out.
I wouldn't go that far, but
well,
I mean, yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from there. A lot of the rhythms and textures on longer tracks, like, I don't know, Cold Summer or Nest or that kind of stuff, they're just very rudimentary, and they're plain, and it doesn't feel all that interesting. We're basically just saying a lot of the same things. But, yeah, I mean, I will say that you mentioned the title track earlier. That is probably my personal favorite from this album. Just the first one. I thought the first one sounded amazing. Just all the pianos and stuff. It sounded really great, but it just never really got up to that same level for me afterwards.
With this record, I do feel like, honestly, some of the highlights are in the back half. I remember The President is Dead. I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah.
That song, I didn't mind much at all. In fact, I love the way the percussion actually feels like it has some power and rhythm to it, instead of these tracks that just sort of float all around for 8 minutes. I love how there's something, yeah, I hate to phrase it this way, there's something tangible there. There's something, you know, to grasp onto, in my opinion. Even if I don't like the synth tones that are leading the track, there's something there, which is what... I don't want to trash this record, because it's not terrible, and it's pleasant, and it's enjoyable, but I'm a little bit more harsher with my ratings than you are, as I've noticed, and I just don't find this anything worth really coming back to, maybe besides Tingle, which is an enjoyable song, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think before we give out ratings, I will say there is one album that I'm going to recommend to people watching this, and it's one that I reviewed a while back, that came out this year. It's an album that sounds almost exactly the same as this one, but just was much better executed across the board, and that is the album from Solar Fields called Hourdom. I think, yeah, the sound and production style is almost exactly the same, but I think it was way better structured, more like one continuous track that keeps evolving and changing over time rather than the same 3 or 4 copy-pasted tracks, and even has better actual variety to boot, so I would recommend checking out that at some point, because I think it's capitalizes on a lot of the good qualities of this album. Check Solar Fields Hourdom is what I would recommend to people.
And on my channel, I usually say, like, my favorites, so if you'd want to
sure.
Hear, like, one or two.
My favorites that I have written down are Excursions, Let's Go Thunderbird, Aviva, and Leak. I like Leak.
Yeah.
And Figure Eights. I'll also add on Figure Eights.
Figure Eight's cool. If I were to list off a few, I would definitely say Tingle, which is... Tingle is so good to me for no apparent reason. I definitely think it'll make its way into, like, my monthly playlist for the next month or two. Definitely the title track, which is just, like you said, you hit it on the head when you were talking about it, with the nice piano textures and almost wind instruments with, like, these hints of strings behind it that I really liked. And Figure Eight is really cool. I just like the way that one sounds. I don't really want to dive into the nitty-gritty.
So, yeah, rating, I'm personally overall feeling a 6.5 on this. Could be much better.
I do ratings a little differently than you. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this.
Alright, so, yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that, then. Of course, this is all just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Go check out Ethan from the LP Club's channel. He makes really cool reviews. Mostly more of rock music and other stuff, not so much electronic like I do, but yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.